Hi, good morning, dear friends. As we have already seen in chapter 7, Glimpses of India, now what we have is chapter number 8, Mijbil the Otter. Before we move further, let me show you what otter is all about. It's a pet, and many of us, we keep this as pet. Now it is not very common in India, but abroad and most of the places we will be we'll also be discussing about where and how it is available. Okay, dear friends, so you have already paid attention to what that creature looks like. Now let us understand what Gavin Maxwell, the author, wants to tell us. Who is he? Gavin Maxwell lives in a cottage in Camusferna in the West Highlands in Scotland. So it's a Scottish country where his dog Johnny died. Okay. Now because Gavin Maxwell was very much fond of pets, he has kept those pets with him. And now because of the death of his beloved dog, he wants to keep another pet, and that is he chooses to keep an otter. Maxwell was too sad to think of keeping a dog again. So perhaps you may have a sort of attraction, and after that what happens? You become so indulged into a sort of relationship that when you lose that particular person or thing or a pet animal, you feel upset. But life without a pet was lonely. Perhaps he is a lonely person alone, and therefore he always wanted to keep a pet. Okay. Read what happened then in Maxwell's own words. Now if you just see that the length of the chapter, it's plenty. It's a big, huge chapter. But let us see. Now I do not want you to focus on activity, as now that we are supposed to have main concern learning our chapter. But my dear friends, I would just like you to understand, do you have a pet? Now most of us are fond of having some bird, perhaps cat or dog. And here this is an appropriate question. If you do, you perhaps know that a pet is a serious responsibility. Okay, and it's not just like for your own benefit you keep, or just like because you are selfish or because you want to cage some free animal or bird. But sometimes what happens is a weakness, and at the same time when you are keeping that, you are supposed to have been treated that as a responsibility. Yes, dear friends. So now that is what in front of us. Now there are differences why an animal can be a responsibility. At the same time, otters are found in the large number of marshes, wet areas. Now we have been given two different Iraq, because the author Maxwell visited that particular place. Then he had to take London, and both the different climates have been given to us. And this is where now what we have is the beginning of the story. Let me give you an explanation from the notes that I have, dear friends. What is the chapter exactly for? So chapter number 8, Mijbil, okay, or Mijbil, whatever, the otter. Chapter sketch. So if you just keep on reading, you have first opening lines, something, and I shall be briefing you with the chapter. Okay, so you don't need to have everything to be kept in mind, but yes, minute details we have to have in mind, and as we read the chapter we will come to know. So as we are moving here, we will begin with early in the new year. In 1956 I traveled to southern Iraq. And now what happens? So chapter sketch. From the notes that I have, I will be reading. Meanwhile, you can also turn your eyes on the pages there. In this story, the author Gavin Maxwell tells us about his unusual pet Mijbil, an otter. He tells that when his dog died, he decided to have another pet. Soon, he shifted to Iraq, So that's what in activity we were given what the condition in Iraq is and what is the condition in London. Soon he shifted to Iraq, where he saw people were keeping otters as a pet. He also decided to have an otter as a pet. Now that is in Iran or Iraq, this sort of a mongoose-like. You have already seen a pig, and once again I can show you what some of you may not have paid attention to that. So this is what it looks like, dear friends. Okay, so it's like for us it's a mongoose kind of thing. Okay, and this is what the author wants to keep. He describes while he had to shift to England, how much problems were faced by him in taking Mijbil with him. Now, my dear friends, if you just read first and second part, he bought this Mijbil, that is what he had named his otter, from Iraq. And then what happens? He bought that, it was very new. Perhaps the first part is showing how he behaved. He behaved the very first day very lonely. Then second day he comes to the author slowly but maintaining a distance. Third day he enjoyed his bath at the bathroom. And at the same time, my dear friends, slowly, a couple of days later, he becomes very much familiar. Now what has happened, as we already know, that the author had moved to Iraq and he was supposed to go back to London. Now, meanwhile, what happens? The England or London Airlines, they do not allow these creatures or pets to be, taken a ride for or flight for, and that's what he arranges some more, via road, and that's what we are told in this particular story. So, on reaching London, now when you just read the story, meanwhile he has packed it in a box. This is a later part. And slowly becomes very furious because he has already got a bit of fear. He became furious and just wants to come out of that mini box, because only the size of box, was allowed to be kept for him, and therefore he feels very uneasy. Now he's bleeding rather, because he has tried his level best to come out of the box. So now there was a distance of just 5 miles, 10 minutes remaining. And the author Maxwell sees that the box was, almost torn apart, but tries to cover up with some cloth and newspaper as well. And now moving to that particular place. On reaching London, so if you read this, my dear friends, we come to know what exactly the details we have. And he is disturbing the passengers there. The air hostess just wants to take a look and wants to pamper, but all these things were unusual. And meanwhile all these things were happening, the air hostess herself found that the pet was missing from the box and that he was making a move into the flight. So this is what, if you just read the lines, they have been telling us. And now the second part, that is that on reaching London, people did not recognize the otter. They used to make guesses about the animal. So it was, as we are already told, that this particular animal was not kept in the white, or this so-called in England or in other countries, European countries. The author thoroughly enjoyed the time spent with the otter. Now we will also study about the characters that we have. About the characters. So you see, my dear friends, in the second part already we have been given this beautiful picture of the otter. Okay. So meanwhile you can also read the text given to you, and I hope you have already have your textbook and you shall be reading from that. About the characters, Craven Maxwell is a very caring and a polite person. He takes complete care of his pet, Mijbil Otter, or Thai Otter. He is the pet of the narrator. He is a very friendly intelligent, and fun-loving creature. You see, now we have already been given the characteristics of that particular creature. Very, very friendly, also intelligent and fun-loving creature. He plays with water and other objects like rubber balls, and it is also said that marbles were very fond of this particular creature. The author traveled to southern Iraq. Now we will keep what is exactly the story. He decided to keep an otter in 1956 when he had traveled to Iraq as a pet. As his native place of living, Camus Fima, had much water around, an otter was suitable for the experiment. So perhaps people are not keeping there, but because the place where the otter came from, Camus or Fima, there lot of water was available, and I think this creature would love to have time spent there. The author and his friend traveled to Basra. Now Basra is the place in London that supposed to this author was to go. When the author mentioned about his wish to keep an otter as a pet to his friend, he suggested him to take an otter from Tigris marshes, as they are quite common there. So quite common there because these places, these pets are easily available. They were going to Basra to collect their mails. Now meanwhile, the author Maxwell and his friend, they were also having purpose or perhaps a business, and they were supposed to collect their mails. Okay. Now earlier in 1956, electronic mails were not available, but those telegrams were available, and therefore they were supposed to have the letters received. Okay. The mail of his friend reached, but his mail did not arrive. So very first part, when you look again, you go back to this first part. Here in this first part, this perhaps the story has been given to us. The author's mail arrives and he gets the otter. See now how he manages to get the otter. Let us see that. The author sent a telegram to England and his mail had not arrived. For 3 days there was no reply. So one day we have already been given 3 days description. What happened the one day because of the line was not all right. The second day there was a religious holiday. All these things are given. If you read each and every line of the chapter, we have been given clearly indications. For 3 days there was no reply. He tried to make a phone call, but due to some problems he was not able to get through. Finally, after 5 days, his mail arrives. Once his mail arrived, he went to his room to read it. There he saw 2 Arabs with an otter. They told that it was for him. So did you understand, my dear friends? He had bought that particular Mijbil the Otter from the Arabs. And Arabs must be, having a business of the same or pet like. Strangeness of the otter. Now what has happened? Mail has been received by the author. Author goes inside to read, and now the author has been given that particular otter by 2 Arabs. Okay. Now this particular otter has already reached the destination of the author's place, or wherever the author wanted to take him. Okay, dear friends. So with this, meanwhile we are also learning that now author wanted to have a pet. He was busy with his mail, and at the same time 2 Arabs come here to send him this particular otter, the pet. Okay. Now what we'll do is we will understand the second part into the second section, because we need to divide the chapter when we read the chapter, each and every line. Okay. And we will try to understand in a better manner.